It's Florida State week, okay? Here's the deal. We all know that this game for both teams, it's not ending up the way that everyone way back in, say, August thought it was going to end up. Not at all. But we're still going to talk about it. I mean, sure, they have 38 championships between the two of them in the ACC, 22 to my Clemson Tigers. I'll go ahead and say that. But Florida State is, I mean, they're Florida State. Bobby Bowden, Peter Warwick, Warwick Dunn, all the Warwicks, Jimbo Fisher. Well, Watley was there, Jameis Winston. But there's one thing, we can take shots at one another, have a little fun here. But neither Clemson or Florida State looks like, well, they used to. And to talk about that, I'm bringing on an old friend here, Jesse from Plant the Spear. Jesse, thanks for joining me, dude.
I know. Hey, what's up, man? Just, a whole lot of despair between the two of us. Who would have ever thought? Like, the crazy thing about this game is if you actually think about it, these are the past two ACC champions that are meeting right now with us in 23 and you guys in 24. And here we are in a battle for bowl eligibility. Maybe even that. I don't even know if we can consider ourselves mid-level teams right now. Man, never saw this coming. But, hey, at least we're not kicking off at 10 a.m. on the CW or something like that. So, it is what it is. It's bad, man.
I'm shocked it's not on the QVC home shopping network because I think we both deserve it, especially Clemson. All right, so you had the crazy season last year, Jesse. You come into this season, you have probably one of the most head-scratching, dominating wins I've seen in a long time because you didn't just beat Alabama. You didn't upset them. I mean, y'all grabbed them by the throat and slammed them like a child. And then, so first off, where are you guys at mentally? Because I know where I'm at. I'm already subscribing to some of that depression medicine I'm seeing on TV. Tell me the state of Florida State right now for you.
It's pretty crazy when you think about, like, we're 4-4, but this is actually an improvement from last season. That's the crazy part. But really, when we came into the season, I think a lot of us really just wanted to see, all right, let's get to 8-4. Let's make a decent bowl. Yes, it's an improvement off of 2-10, but my biggest gripe has always been, well, who was responsible for 2-10? Because 2-10 should never happen at a place like Florida State. And so, but you could understand, okay, we're changing coordinators, we're making a lot of changes, bringing in a lot of new pieces on the offense and the defense. So if you can get to 8-4, that feels like a pretty good stepping stone season. Then you go into 26 with a maybe 10-win mindset, compete for the ACC, compete for the playoffs. But the problem was that Alabama game flipped everything on its head. And it should, because I think, like, a lot of times we get really caught up in preseason expectations. And I'll be fully transparent. Like, I had Clemson playing for a national championship this year in my preseason expectations. But I think when you saw that game, you were like, wow, this might actually be better than we thought. Like, this could be like, if you can beat Alabama like that, you should be able to look at our schedule and find 9 to 10 wins on that in the regular season. And so that's where we were like, okay, Alabama would probably win the ACC or at least play for the ACC championship. So if you beat them 31-17, you should be able to play for the ACC championship. And then we felt good about that. Then you go into the next two games. And this was like, these two games, these cupcake games, this is why I try to always filter those out in everything that we do, because it just doesn't mean anything. Like, you should be able to beat those teams like you did. We blew out two no-nothing teams, and then you come back and it's like, all right, well, let me see what I saw against Alabama, against a team that actually has a pulse. Then we go on the road to Virginia, losing double overtime, which at the time felt bad because Virginia hasn't really been a good team. But now you see that they're 8-1, and you're like, okay, well, maybe that's not too terrible. It's a Friday night game. Every time we go to Charlottesville as a top 10 team at night, we lose, especially on a non-Saturday game. It's just a tradition that we have in Tallahassee. So you do that, and then you're like, okay, well, you got Miami on the backside of that. That's going to be the hard part. And at the time, Miami hadn't started their annual meltdown. And so you lose that game, and the scoreboard watchers will say that was a one-score game. But if you really watch the game, we were not really that competitive in that game. And then you come back against Pitt, and you're like, okay, well, as long as you can beat Pitt, maybe it was just a hangover loss or something like that. And then you lose to Pitt at home. They were starting a freshman quarterback in that game, true freshman, first road start. That's really when people started to get the pitchforks out for Mike Norvell again. Because we had, after Alabama in those first 3 weeks, we had put everything away. We were like, hey, man, this just might be the key. Like, we just had to make these changes. We're back rolling. And then you lose to Pitt. And then probably what I would consider the second worst loss in Mike Norvell's tenure outside of the Jacksonville State loss was the loss at Stanford, 20-13, just a terrible showing. There was no life on that team, and that's a really bad Stanford team. So you go over there, you lose that, and at that point, everybody expected Mike Norvell to get fired on that Sunday. Everybody was like, okay, well, the news is going to come out. And then it was like, okay, well, it's a West Coast game when it didn't come out. So maybe it's going to be Monday. Then Monday, it doesn't happen. But they put out the little vote of confidence thing. And so then nobody knows what to expect at that point. But then you come back and you beat Wake, who I know it's Wake Forest, but it's not a bad Wake Forest team. And you beat the brakes off of them 42-7. So this is the most bipolar season ever. Like nobody knows really what to expect here. And that's why I think now, they had the bye week. We moved into the football only facility. I don't know if that changes anything. The noise around Mike Norvell and his job, and maybe they're rallying that, the players defended him in press conferences. So maybe they're rallying around him. Whatever they did, it worked. But will it work again? Because we saw it look good against Alabama and then terrible after that. So what do they do against Clemson? That's what I'm interested in. What do they do against Virginia Tech and a decent NC State team, and then Florida to end the season? And I think if Mike Norvell gets to 7-5, 8-4, wins 3 or 4 of the last 4, and makes a bowl game, I don't think he's getting fired. I think he's going to come back. I think if he goes, say, 5-7 and misses the bowl and some things don't look so good. I mean, we did just lose a couple of recruits actually today. One of our top recruits in the class. That's when I think you could see them really start to weigh the decision there. And I will say, before that Wake game, like pretty much all the big wigs were on the field. So I think had he had lost the Wake game, that might have been it. So I think a lot of us are ready for a change regardless. But we also know it's probably going to be $70 million to make a change at head coach. And so it's not ideal. And is it realistic is the question.
Yeah. Looking at your schedule right now, for anyone who hasn't seen the schedule, of course, Florida State plays at Clemson this coming Saturday night, 7:00 on the ACC, PBS, QVC network. You play a very bad Virginia Tech team. You should beat them. You play a sneaky NC State team. They're not amazing, but they can beat you. They beat Virginia. That did not count as a conference loss. This is one of those weird years where they play a conference team. It's not counted as a conference loss. And then you play at Florida, who knows what you're going to get there. Definitely winnable. There's a chance, as an outsider looking in, just talking pure football here, forget Clemson and Florida State. I see that y'all could win the last 4. I could see you losing 2. But I think it's really up to if your coaching staff can get everyone to focus and get all the silly out and just play. Who do you, and before we get into Clemson, I just really want to talk about Florida State. Not to trash, me, I don't like to trash people, but sometimes when you tell the truth, it's just, unfortunately, it is what it is. It's like, if you don't want me to tell the truth, write a different truth.
Right.
Give me something else to talk about here. Who do you look at other than Mike Norvell and say, this is on you? Like, this is on you. Is it both the coordinators? Is it some of the position coaches? Is it all of the above? But who do you really eye for this deficiency and this up and downness? Because for us Clemson fans, we have no bright spot. Y'all have Bama and beating the crap out of Wake Forest. I said this today. Wake Forest is not a bad football team. They're not terrible. I was eyeing y'all going, if he loses this game, they're firing him. And then he throttles him. Where are you at when you're looking at the coaching staff and you're like, you're responsible for this, other than Norvell?
Yeah, the hard part for us is being that they just made the change, right? Like, a lot of us think Mike Norvell is the problem, and a lot of the problems come from Mike Norvell. But when you're in year 1 of the changes, it's kind of hard to blame the coordinators right away, right? Like, the offense looks night and day better with Gus Malzahn OC. So I would say he is definitely doing his job. The defense has not been good so far this year. And so we put a lot of that on Tony White. Now, they just held Wake basically 42-0 in the fourth quarter. So they got a shutout after a strip sack once the backups came in. But that Wake offense isn't great either. So we've seen the defense play good against Alabama. We saw them play good against Wake Forest, but they had a couple of bad games in between that. And so it was a lot of that was on the defense. But I think when you talk about like the struggles that maybe led us here was a lot of the recruiting issues that we've had. Now that ultimately falls on Norvell because he is the head man and he's in charge of making staff changes. I think a lot of what got us here is the staff that was here before. Like they didn't recruit well, they didn't develop well. That does fall on Norvell as well. Because you look at the new coordinators and like we have a lot of freshmen who are playing really good right now, and a lot of young guys who have stepped up. It looks like the development aspect has gotten better under the new staff that just started this year, but you're trying to make up for the lack of development and the lack of high level recruiting from the last staff. But again, I think it all comes back to Mike Norvell and his, not making staff changes early enough before, and then he had to make them basically under like a forced hand. So he kind of had to take who he could get after a 2-10 season. There's a lot of lack of development that comes from that past staff that, again, it just falls on him. So I think you have seen like the hard part is this team is so much better than they were last year. But the problem is they should have never been that bad last year. I mean, it's a team that went 13-0 until the Orange Bowl debacle there the year before that. So you should have never had that type of fall. But they have gotten a lot better. So I just put a lot of what we're seeing right now is mostly on the recruiting and the development, and a lot of that again just falls back to Mike Norvell. I mean, to me, when you look at Mike, and Mike's a great guy, man. He does things the right way. We don't really have any off the field issues. Like have never rooted against Mike Norvell. I've always wanted him to work out. I was in favor of keeping him after 2023 when they gave him the extension. Like I don't think that was a dumb move at the time. But I also think when you talk about having a $10 million CEO head coach, the least he should be able to do is stock the roster with elite level talent. He should be a dominant recruiter. And Mike Norvell just has not shown that ability throughout his tenure. Like, with Dabo, at least Dabo has shown the ability to recruit for most of his tenure, right? And Mike, we have not signed a top 10 class since he's been in Tallahassee. And that's even coming off a 10-win season. That's coming off a 13-win season, has never signed a top 10 class. So I think that is a big part of it. And then obviously, the way we kind of operate with Norvell since he's been here is going back to the transfer portal over and over and over, which of course comes back on recruiting. And anytime you start to go to the transfer portal year after year after year, the hit rate becomes a little bit lower over time, especially as more and bigger teams start to adopt the portal, like the Ohio States and stuff, who actually will go in there and get the pieces that they need now. And so I think that's a big part of it, is just some misses in the portal, maybe some unnecessary moves in the portal. Like, we will put 9 running backs on the roster. And yet we need some offensive line or some defensive line depth. Like, I don't understand why we're paying 9 different running backs. It just doesn't make any sense. I think it's little things like that have added up over his 6-year tenure that have led us to where we're at now. But I do like the new coordinators. I really do. I like the new position coaches that we have. Herb Hand has been great on the offensive line. He's done good things with them. I think the problem for the coordinators is, will they be able to outlive Mike Norvell's shadow, so to speak, right? His staleness on the program. Will they just kind of be the throw the baby out with the bathwater if he gets fired? And I think that's obviously going to be the case. So I like Gus. I don't want him as a head coach. I like Gus as an OC. I like Tony White. But again, like I said, man, it's just I think if Mike Norvell goes, they're going to go with him.
I totally understand that, because from a Clemson perspective, there's a lot of people looking at Tom Allen. Here he is. They're like, Tom Allen, I thought he was supposed to be good. And it's like, bro,
yeah,
he just got here. He just got here. But I'll tell you who hasn't just got here. It's that staff that he has. The vast majority of them, they were the supporting cast for the last DC. And, I'm not sitting here trying to rip anyone, but I'm just saying, we saw missed tackles last year. We started seeing some problems the year before, but definitely last year, tons of missed tackles. Lenora Sellers from South Carolina, he's still breaking tackles. They're not even playing. We see that. We saw Citadel rush for almost 300 yards against Clemson in Death Valley. This is
crazy.
This is an FCS team that didn't even make the FCS playoff. They were not even good within their league, and they went to Death Valley and rushed for almost 300 yards. So, yeah, you change your DC, but you have to understand there's development issues there. And while everyone's harping on the portal, it's like, I mean, we have to develop players.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
I,
because
I get that.
you
Yeah.
can't tell me Clemson and Florida State don't have the talent to have a better record than what they do. Regardless of the
Mm,
portal needs and all that stuff, just even the rosters that you have when you play in the
yeah.
ACC, there's no reason that Clemson shouldn't be winning 9, 10 games every year because you have a talent gap on everybody else, not named
Yeah.
maybe Florida State and Miami.
Yeah, I mean, let's look. And for anyone who's watching this, you're unfamiliar with the Florida State season. Let's talk about the losses. The losses are painfully close. Virginia, that went into overtime, 46-38.
Yeah.
Miami, 28-22. Now let's go ahead and stop there. I know that was a blowout going into the late third quarter, early
Yep.
fourth quarter. But here's the deal: Florida State did hold, and Florida State did come back. So we could put an asterisk there, but Miami almost blew it. We have Pitt winning by 3. You have Stanford winning by 7. Should have never been in that
Hmm.
in that position. I believe that you should have been in that position with Pitt at all. With that said, it has been painfully close. And so, I think that Florida State is at that really, really weird place to where if you fire Norvell, aside from all the money, and these schools have got to stop over leveraging. I
Yeah.
don't care if they do have the same agent. This is not good for football. This is not good for the staff. It doesn't give coaches incentives to work harder and sweat and be more careful, sweat their decisions and be more careful who they hire. With that said, I mean, they are y'all are better.
Yeah.
Y'all are better. Definitely better than last year, which again, not taunting you here. It doesn't take much there. So that would be a question for me. And then on top of that, you have LSU and Florida and Penn State
Yeah.
firing people. You have other schools firing people. So if y'all decided to fire him, y'all are going to have some genius hire or else just keep him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the hard part right now is like, where do you fall in the job? Because you got Auburn in there too. And I would put Florida State, if it came open, I would put you obviously behind LSU. I think you're probably behind Auburn and probably behind Penn State just because of, you get the hotbed of Florida, but they get the Big Ten edge. And obviously we see from the CFP rankings that we both play in a kind of a second rate conference, according to the College Football Committee, with the way the rankings went. And so, you do have to keep that in mind, right? And there's a lot of people that think, hey, it might be Jimbo Fisher that might be the answer to coming back. And I don't know that that's the answer. I think he really does want this job. I think he really does. I think he would probably, I think he would be willing to negotiate on some salary to get this job back. But I think when you look at how expensive it's going to be for Florida State to fire him, that's why I think they're waiting till the end of the season, because I think, when they said, okay, we're going to support them, we're going to see how they finish the season, then we'll do a comprehensive analysis, is what they said. Like, we don't have 6 years worth of stuff to watch. I do think that they want to wait. I do think if he makes 7-5 and gets a bowl, I think they want to keep him. I think they want to at least give it another chance. And for me, I tweeted in the third quarter of the Miami game, and it did not go over well. That I was ready to go. Like, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's go. Everybody's time. Let's do it now. And then the Pitt game happened. Everybody's like, oh, okay, well, all right, maybe you were onto something. Then Stanford happens, and they're like, okay, maybe you were just early to the party. But I think there is a realistic thought about that. Who can you get? How much is it going to cost? And really, when you have to pay $60-70 million for Florida State to get rid of Mike Norvell, do you have the money to go pay $14-15 million for like a Lane Kiffin type of splash hire? No, I don't think we do. And so I think you'd have to kind of take a shot and hope for maybe a coordinator, maybe take another shot on a G5 coach, which that's not really going to excite your boosters or anything like that. And then there is the thought process too, where, for me anyway, I don't know that anyone else thinks this way, but for me, if you wait until after 2026, let's just say you go 7-5, you give him one more year. Well, you gave Gus Malzahn and the new coordinators another year to flesh out. You let him make his changes. You let him have his chance to actually go through the process. They are better, like you said, this year than they were last year, so you can at least take that into account. And then also, that's a really hard schedule we got next year. When you look at it, I mean, we have to go to Alabama. We have you guys at home. We got to go to Miami, to Louisville, and we get Notre Dame at home, and then Florida as well. So, like, it's a really hard schedule next year. So you could bring in a new coach that might struggle to get 7-8 wins, and that maybe you let Mike Norvell kind of wear that schedule next year and be like, look, man, hey, the bar still has to be moved up. right? You still can't be saying 7 to 8 wins saves your job in year 7 when you've now had time for your rebuild to set in. So the bar still needs to be 9, 10 wins, compete for Charlotte, and try and get into the playoffs. It's just going to be against a harder schedule. And if you navigate that, congratulations, you saved your job. And if you don't, we're going to move on to someone else for a little bit less price. But you do have to think about kind of where you are in the order of things. This is a crazy coaching cycle. I
Yeah.
just also think of the mindset of who knows what next year is going to bring too. You just never know.
Yeah. I mean, looking at, and I named out the scores just a second ago. You're 8 points away from a tie in a ball game, so it'd be 9 points to win. You're 7 points from a win. You're 4 points from a win, and I'm accounting the extra point to actually pull off the win here.
Yeah.
You're 8 points. You're 8 points from a win. You're very, very close. And for me, you know me. You know me. I'm a competitive guy, but also you need to be a realist here.
Yeah.
Can you afford it? And are you really being fair to the current coaching staff who seemingly has turned things around? And for me on the outside looking in, as hard as this is to say, I think you owe him another year unless the rest of this season, I mean, it's just like Grand Central awful. It's just terrible. So
I
it
agree.
will be interesting.
Well, the funny thing is, if they hadn't lost to Stanford and they had pulled off the Pitt game, on top of that, you'd be 6-2 and no one would be saying a word. We'd be like, you know what? I'm still all aboard. Pitt looks pretty decent. They're ranked. They're 7-2. Maybe even that. If you just hadn't lost the Stanford game, I think a lot of people could be like, okay, even 5-3 with some winnable games on the backside of the schedule, that's not bad. And I think they could have accepted that. The Stanford one was really kind of the one that was the straw, right? But if you just, man, if he'd have just lost 6-2 right now, if you'd have just beat Pitt and you'd have just beat Stanford, I don't think anybody'd be saying a word about where we were at. But I think you're right. I mean, let's just say he finishes the season strong. And I've said this on our channel. Like, I think he can save himself for another year if he wins and it looks good, right? You can't go out here and beat Virginia Tech at home by 3 under an interim staff and stuff like that. And so game 1, you beat Wake Forest by 35. Like, congratulations, that's step 1. You go up and lose to Clemson by 20. Everyone's going to be back on the let's fire him train. You lose 3 of the last 4, you're probably going to get fired then. So, like, if you win and say you go beat Clemson by 2 scores, right? I don't expect it to be a blowout by any means, but you win that game by, say, 10 points, and then you beat Virginia Tech by 3 scores, and then you maybe you lose to NC State, but you beat your rival Florida at the end of the year, who's still playing hard, but they still got a couple losses probably coming their way before we get to that game. I think that's okay to get him another year. And I think you could actually sell some excitement with that. Like, yeah, okay, look, we screwed up in October. We lost a couple games that we shouldn't have, but we finished really strong. And in 2022, we kind of did the same thing. We had a 3-game losing streak. We lost to Wake, you guys, and then NC State. And then they went on a tear and just beat the brakes off a bunch of bad teams throughout the rest of the season. And then 2023 happened. So you could see the path to where, like, okay, we could set us up for a good season next year. The problem is in 23, you returned a ton of stuff. Going into next year, we are going to guaranteed lose our entire offensive line, probably the quarterback. And if Deuce Robinson goes pro, we got a lot of holes to fill. So it's not going to be the same situation as 23. But, if he looks good winning a couple games the rest of the year, then I could see a fair opportunity to get 26.
I see y'all winning 3 ball games I don't want to say easily.
Yeah.
And I think as long as there's no blowouts, he can keep his job with possibly only 6 wins, believe it or not. I could see him doing that. It's according to how the games go. I could see that. But it's very interesting to talk to you about Florida State, looking at Norvell. We know the things that are going on in Clemson right now, and there's different factions there. People are like, fire Swinney. I don't want Swinney fired. I've said this so many times. I just agree with you. Clemson, South Carolina, especially with all the success that they've had over the past 12 years, you're not going to win a national championship every year. You're not always going to have 10 wins, but we can leave that there. Before we talk about this Florida State game, and I know we talked about a lot about Florida State, but to me, I think the dynamic of what's going on there, it impacts the game and how it's going to work out for either team. Let's just spend just a moment. I don't want to eat up too much time here. Let's just talk about over leveraging with the contracts. We see this rampant throughout college football. I'm one of the guys who's like, we need to scale back We need to scale back the contracts, and we need to build a bunch of incentives, a lot of bonuses in there that gives them a reason to go out, hire the best
Yeah.
staff, call the best plays, not put up with nonsense and craziness versus giving them this fat stack of cash, and win or lose, they win. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think that we'll ever see a break, or is this just how it is and we're going to have to, sit in our dirty diaper and deal with it?
Yeah, man. It's the American dream. There is no better job than a bad football coach with a big buyout. Like, I don't know where I sign up for that on career day, but sign me up because I would love that. And I'm sure, like with Mike Norvell, I joked last year, hey, I can probably at least go 2-10 for $10 million a year. But no, I do think you're right. I think the schools have to start putting some protections in place for themselves. It's just ridiculous. And, even when you talk about making a change for like Mike Norvell at Florida State, we can all say what we want to happen. The reality is, what's going to happen is the decision being made by the people who are opening up their checkbooks, because it costs $50 million to fire these coaches, which is absolutely insane. And I mean, obviously, this year has been a record year with James Franklin at $49 million, Brian Kelly at whatever he was getting in the 50s, and rumor of Jimbo Fisher, or Jimbo was $75 million in the past and stuff like that. So it's insane, and it's gotten out of whack. And I think the one thing that I've talked about before, I often wonder if I thought we would see the days of these crazy coaching contracts start to go away when NIL and the portal came about, because obviously right now it looks almost more important to put most of your resources into player acquisition, right? So I think you'll probably be more likely in the future, and this may take a little bit of time for the system to work itself out, but I think in the future you'll see more of an NFL model, right? I think you'll see a GM who is probably a multi-million-dollar GM kind of heading the operation, because it's become so big. It's just it's so much more than it used to be. Like, the head coaches should not be, especially if you're a play calling head coach. Like, that's great to be, but you have to do so much now to manage the roster, recruit your own roster, NIL, all this type of stuff. Even like the CEO head coaches, it's a lot to do for one person. And so I think you should have a GM model put in place. And then I think the coaches, I think you should have a guy who just does more coaching than anything else. And you go, like maybe a $5 million head coach, which is still a lot of daggone money. But you go like $5 million there. And then the bulk of your resources gets put into player acquisition and development, because that's really where it's at, right? I mean, you look at Ohio State. Yes, they're doing great. Yes, Ryan Day is probably a really good coach. But, when you put $30 million into a roster, you're going to have success. And so I think once you see people start to realize where the resources actually should be going in these programs, that's when I think you'll start to see the coaching contracts start to go back the other way. But the problem is right now, man, there's just so much daggone money going around, especially in the SEC and the Big Ten, that they can afford to pay it. And so they're going to pay it because everybody wants to be. It's an arms race, and whoever's got the most money can do it. And anytime you can have something there, anytime, until we have some guardrails on the whole thing, right? The whole thing to help bring it all together. Like, anytime you can have the Texas Tech situation with the guy who, like, inherits his dad's oil company for $4 billion and is their NIL collective founder. Like, until stuff like that gets kind of regulated, then I think you'll see everyone kind of think about, how do we moneyball this to the most success we can have? But when you're allowed to spend unlimited funds, and you have basically unlimited funds, you're probably never going to see it get reined in. And as long
I
as Jimmy
think
Sexton is around, you'll probably never see it get reined
Yeah,
in.
yeah, absolutely. For me, the thing that should be driving donors crazy, keeping them up late at night, Kirk Cignetti.
Yeah.
They should be laying in bed at night going, "Hold on, I gave away a ton of money to this school who was historically a good football team, has won some championships. We're paying our coach out the wazoo, and if he leaves, we're going to have to pay him. If we fire him, excuse me, we're going to be on the hook for this." You would almost think that the business mind of these people would be sitting here going, "I truly believe in return on investment,
Oh,
and
I
my
know.
investment is absolutely terrible. I'm beginning to look unintelligent for even buying into all of this." And
Yeah.
meanwhile, you see Cignetti on the sideline just looking at the camera with that very sarcastic, semi-miserable look, and he's just churning out wins at a
Yeah.
historically bad football team. So,
Yeah. It's funny.
yeah,
It's funny. I agree. And, me and Michael were talking about it on our show the other day. We were laughing. We were like, say you won the Powerball or something like that for about
yeah.
$500 million. And it's like, I would love to say I would pay Mike Norvell's buyout, but I don't know that even if I had it like that, that I would just donate $50
No.
million when you talk about ROI just for a coach not to coach. That's insane. But a lot of that, like you said with Signetti, I mean, this is the guy that you look at Fernando Mendoza, their quarterback right now. I talked to him at ACC Media Days 2 years ago when he was at Cal, and he was like an unranked recruit out of South Florida who said, man, I camped at Miami and Florida State, didn't get an offer from either one, went to Cal, did his thing there, wasn't, super great, goes to Indiana, and now he's like a Heisman contender and a first round draft pick. And it's like, man, that's coaching, right? That's putting them
Yeah.
in a position and development and all that. And, as much as I love Mike Norvell, we haven't developed a quarterback since he's been in Tallahassee. Jordan Travis was the only one we've hit on, and he was a transfer. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I get paying for good coaching. But at the end of the day, I still think the money is probably going to end up being towards the rosters, right, in the long
Yeah.
run. And I think that's going to have to come out of somebody's pocket, and it's probably going to be the coaches.
I think unfortunately we're seeing too many coaches be paid like they're a really good coach, and most of them
Amen
are
to
not.
that.
They are
Yeah,
not.
amen to that.
Let's go in our remaining time. And again, everyone go check out Jesse at Plant the Spear and his partner, Michael. I wish he was on here with us because I enjoyed speaking with him the
Yeah.
last time. So please tell him I said hello and missed him on here. Go check out Plant the Spear. The link is below this video. Drop a line to them. Let them know that you saw them on this channel. Let's move into this Clemson and Florida State underwhelming game. Clemson is a favorite in this game. Let's just throw this out there. Clemson has, if my memory serves me correct, has been the favorite in every game they played this year. So that means nothing. Clemson is 1-5 at home over their last 6 home games, going all the way back to the South Carolina game. And if we want to be super granular, they're actually 1-2-6 in their past 7 at home. And one of those wins was actually Citadel, and the other one was Troy. You guys seem to be figuring some stuff out. You're coming into this game. Where is your mind at? With everything we just talked about, where's your mind at going into this game?
It's funny when you talk about going up to Clemson. So I still it's hard for me to still get out of my mind that maybe you can win at Death Valley, because when you talk about Florida State, we've only won up there twice in the last decade. And both of those teams, one of them was 2013 that went on to win a national championship. One of those was 2023 that should have gotten the opportunity to play for a national championship. And so it's still that mindset of like, man, you still got to go up there to a really difficult place and win. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about the stats that you just mentioned. To think that Clemson is on a 6-game losing streak against Power 4 opponents in Death Valley is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, you guys had so many seasons over the past decade where either you didn't lose any home games or you didn't lose more than one. Like, I don't know that you lost 6 home games in the last 10 years combined. So it's insane to think that that can happen. And even the win there against Troy was kind of a struggle there. So I think a lot of us think that this is still a Clemson team that is very talented. This is still a Clemson team that is still a tough place to play at night. I really kind of didn't want this game to be at night in Death Valley. And I think I'm pretty sure you guys have like one more game that's like a kind of a G5 team or something, or FCS team. So
Yeah.
this is like this is the last big game. So I'm sure Clemson fans are going to pack it out for this one. And so that's kind of what I worry about, right? Is the energy's going to be there. This team could use a win, and then it's still a very talented Clemson team. The offense is still on there. I don't love some of the matchups. Our secondary is one of our biggest weaknesses, and you guys have a strong pass game. So it's one of those where I just feel like Clemson could pop at any minute. And so I worry about, are we going to go up there and be able to handle that challenge? And also, I don't know what bipolar Florida State team is going to show up, because do we have the team that looked good for 4 games or the team that looked terrible for 4 games? That's the hard part. And so I feel like if we play like we did against Wake Forest last week, I feel like Florida State can go up there and get a win. But if we play like we did against Stanford, Pitt, or even Virginia, where we're turning the ball over, having a lot of costly penalties, the energy maybe isn't there, then I could also see us losing by probably 10 to 20 points, right? It's still a tough place to play. It's still a really good Clemson team. It doesn't make any sense what's going on this year. It really doesn't make any sense for either team, but especially for you guys. I mean, again, I had you guys playing for a national title preseason.
Yeah. A lot of people did. Now, I wouldn't go that far, but I said this could be a special season. Well, it is a special season. It's one to remember.
Yeah, you won't forget it. That's for sure.
It's like walking in on your grandparents making out. You'll never forget it.
Yeah.
You'll never forget it. So let's chat about this for just a moment before we go. Tommy Castellanos, I heard he's battling some injury. On the
Yeah.
other hand, we had Kevin Jennings come in hopping around basically with a peg leg, and he beat us. Do you think that Castellanos has enough of an arm to maybe take some of the pressure off of his leg against Clemson? And I'm going to lob you a softball here. We can't cover anything. We have busted coverage because of miscommunication, missed assignments, etc. Does that give you some hope, or like where is your mind at there other than trying to be extra careful because you're afraid your team's going to lose because of the season that you had? You kind of get gun shy after a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Tommy, man, it's been pretty interesting because he's actually better than people think. Now, he has been nursing an ankle injury. His mentals appears to be okay. I mean, he took a really hard shot, a dirty hit against Stanford, and went into concussion protocol and all that. But he seems to be okay on that front. He's still, I think, nursing that ankle, and you can just tell that in the way that he runs. And obviously, Tommy's legs are what makes him special. But he's actually a really pretty darn good thrower of the football, at least for the deep ball. Florida State actually leads the country in passes or in completions over 50 yards. He was at one point one of the highest deep ball like graded throwers per PFF in the country. So he can throw it good deep. And the problem, or well, I guess the good thing for us, the problem for you guys is one, you have Deuce Robinson out there at wide receiver who makes his life easy. I mean, he's 6'6". He can run. He's got great body control. He's got great hands. He's had 300-yard games so far this year, and missed half of one. And then you also got Mekhi Danzy, a freshman guy who's a track guy who's got a lot of speed, who can get behind DBs. So that's really what helped with the deep ball, right? Danzy caught a 66-yard pass against Wake Forest, and Deuce had 143 yards against Wake. So you got a couple of pieces to work with on the outside. Squirrel White has been a really big disappointment as a transfer in from Tennessee. Pretty much had one big catch against Alabama, nothing the rest of the season. So Tommy has been good at throwing the ball. But the crazy thing is, and I don't know the exact number now, I lost count, but there was a stat floating around there at one point where when Tommy Castellanos throws the ball over 240 yards, at one point the team was 1-6. I think it's now 2-7. So it's crazy to think that the more he throws the ball, the less successful his team is. But he did throw for 271 last week against Wake, and we still won. So maybe that the juju is out of the closet or something like that. But this is also a Gus Malzahn offense. So we're going to try to run the ball more often than not. Like if we can't establish the run, then I think we're in trouble in this game. Like if we have to rely on Tommy, the thing about Tommy is the yardage I think is irrelevant, right? But the attempts is what to watch. If you can keep Tommy throwing the ball 20 times in this game, I think Florida State will probably come out on top. If he throws the ball 30 to 35 times, I think we're in trouble and we're probably going to lose. And so the question for me is more not can Tommy do it? Can we establish the run so Tommy doesn't have to do it? I think that's the way I'm looking at it. And the problem with that is I do look at your pass defense and I understand where that's at. And then I also look at the rushing defense and I understand that it's a top 20 rushing defense. But, we really like to dig into stats and numbers on our show. And one of the things I will say about Clemson's rush defense, this is the one thing that gives me a little bit of confidence here, is the rushing offenses that Clemson has earned that top 20 ranking against. And that has been one in the top 25, but then also 93rd, 110th, 113th, 117th, 119th, 124th, and 130th. Well, Florida State's bringing the 8th ranked rush offense to town. And so to me, if they can establish the run and Tommy can do just enough with his arm, that's going to be the recipe for success. But if he throws it 30, 35 times in this game, we're probably going to lose. We're probably in big trouble.
And to kind of hinge on what you're saying about the passing attempts, to put this in perspective, he has 1,878 yards passing, but he's only made 182 attempts, completed 112 of them. So yeah, he's had some sizable, had to be some sizable gains, to get, 1,878 yards off of 112 completions, to Cade Klubnik, who has 1,950 yards, missing one game, 238 attempts.
Yeah.
But for me, I see that if he can just be a little bit mobile, I'm not talking about quarterback runs, I'm just talking about extending plays.
Yeah.
I think that y'all can definitely take Clemson out at home. And not to, I mean, I went ahead and had my prediction this week, and I said I believe y'all beat Clemson in Death Valley. I've been to a game. I was at the Troy game. I've talked to multiple people who's been to the game since. Death Valley is like a funeral home. Running down the hill has now turned into a brisk walk. The sidelines looks like everyone was told their favorite person is dead. When Dabo Swinney chewed out the defense the other day, if you go back and look at some of their faces, they could absolutely care less that he was yelling at them. This is not the Clemson team that everyone is so used to. This is not the Clemson team that you've seen since 2012. This is a very dejected, very lost, undeveloped football team, and you'll have some bright spots here and there. Bryant Wesco, unfortunately, with a neck injury, he was one of the few bright spots that was coming out. We're also keeping guys on the bench because we're paying NIL players. Jaheim Lawson should be on the field a whole lot more. This guy is unbelievable. Guess what? They're paying other players, so they're keeping Jaheim at bay. So, this is just facts. So that's the reason I believe Florida State comes in and wins this ball game, because I've seen what happens when they have a mobile quarterback who's injured play against them. He can still score because of all those reasons. So man, before we go, again, thanks for coming on the show. Who do you see winning this ball game?
So, I said in this one, I really think it comes down to who wants it more, right? I think if I hadn't seen us play Wake Forest, I probably would have said, I don't think either team wants it, really. I think we're just kind of like hot potato in the game. Like, who's going to musical chairs? Who's going to be stuck with this thing last? But I think there has been, and I could be wrong about this, but there has been a little bit of push there was about 4 or 5 players after the Wake Forest game said, man, this is not on Mike Norvell. We're still playing for him. And they understand all the things that have been said and people calling for his job. So it seems like there has been like the energy from the Stanford game to the Wake game is night and day. And now, can they carry that into Clemson? That's going to be the big question. I think for Clemson, the hard part for them is this is uncharted territory, right? Even last year in a down year, you still won the ACC and made the playoffs. So that team is still invested. Like, this team probably doesn't care about playing in the Gator Bowl if they make a bowl or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think Clemson's probably just ready to be done with this season more than anything and to get back to their normal standard, right? Florida State, this isn't our standard either, but I think we're at least kind of like finding things to play for, right? They haven't quit yet. And I'm not saying that Clemson has quit, but when you're a team that's used to playing for something really good, and then you see that happened to us last year, right?
Yeah.
Once the season went crazy and we were on this redemption tour that came off the tracks and the dumpster was on fire and fell over and all got hit by a truck and all that stuff. Once it was in that territory, we saw them quit, right? They quit. And so I just wonder where that's at, right, for Clemson. And I think with this one, the night home game could be the factor, but I think Florida State just wants it that much more. And so I do have Florida State winning this one. If they play a clean game and they don't shoot themselves in the foot like they've done, I think they get it done 30-27 in a close one.
I like it. I like it. I
don't like it because I see this going either way, right? I could see us walking out of there and it being 31-17 and we lost.
I see a higher scoring game. I see in the 40s. Neither defense to me has just been amazing.
Yeah.
We've good grief. Both teams has given up a lot of points at times, and you're sitting there going, we just scored 45 and lost.
Yeah, so, that's crazy.
You step back and you look at that. It doesn't make football sense. And for me, when you can really narrow down that a program, no matter who it is in disarray and things are going wompy, is when logical things doesn't produce logical results. And so when you score 45 and you still lose, there's bad problems. So, that's insane. Man, tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, so you can find us at plantthespear.com. We have a website. We have links to everything over there. You can find all our YouTube videos, podcasts, written articles, and all that stuff there on our website. Of course, we're here on YouTube at Plant the Spear. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't do TikTok. I can't do enough. That's enough to keep up with. I can't dance for views or anything like that. So, but we have fun on social media. We have fun on the show. We try and do at least a couple a week, a post-game show and all that stuff. So, man, I really appreciate you having me on. Always look forward to this. Hopefully, this is we went from the Bowing Bowl to the Butt Cheeks Bowl. So hopefully we can be done with this before too long and be back to some fun games to talk about, man. But I really appreciate you having me on.
Man, it's a pleasure, and let Michael know we missed him here. Folks, go check them out. Let them know you saw them on the channel. Subscribe over there. Hit the thumbs up on their videos and show them some love. Before we go, hey, if you haven't subscribed here, maybe you're watching because of Plant the Spear. I hope you'll subscribe. Check it out. It's free. Hit the thumbs up. That helps. Also, check out my other channel, Another College Football Podcast. Yes, I'm picking at myself because there's so many podcasts, but Another College Football Podcast where I talk about college football as a whole. It's a brand new channel. Check that out over there. Man, thanks for